Alright, it's jigging rap season. Now what's better, mono or braid? That's the great debate. Unfortunately, there's no right answer, but there's also no wrong answer. No matter which one you're using, there's an important key to that whole setup, and that's you need to have some sort of a shock absorber in your system or you're gonna lose way too many fish. So let me talk about it a little bit and break down what I mean by that. I primarily am gonna run 10-pound Sufix Advance mono. And I know a lot of people really like braid, but my reason for the mono is it's got that stretch, right? When you're fighting a fish, we've all been there on a jigging rap, it's like, as soon as they get within 10 feet of the boat, you're gonna have one swipe with that net or they are gone. These are heavy baits, tiny hooks, they get to shake in their head, and they can just so easily spit that bait out and get off. Mono, you are 100% gonna land more fish because you've got that shock absorber to help from tearing out hooks, help from popping out hooks. But the problem with mono is if you have too whippy of a rod, you're never gonna get that hook buried in them on the hook set. So if you're running a 10-pound monofilament line with a jigging rap, you have to run a way beefier rod. This one's a 7-1 medium fast 2B Genesis. It's a pretty stout rod. It feels like a rod I would skip docks for bass with, right? But I've got all of the shock absorber, that sponginess, that cushion in my line, so I don't need it in the rod. I need something with tons of backbone so that when I'm snapping it and I have the stretch of that line and I go to pump and I feel there's a fish there, I can double pump them in hook set and still bury that hook even if I'm in 30 feet of water, 25 feet of water, or pitching 40 feet away from the boat. Now when I'm running a 10-pound main line, I like their green. I don't know, it just seems to work well whether it's clear water, dirty water, but I still run about an 18-inch fluorocarbon leader, 10-pound test to a little swivel, and that's just to prevent line twist. Of course, when you're jigging it vertically, it's gonna be darting around and making twists, but also if you're pitching them ahead or pitching them away from the boat into the wind, that thing will spin like a little tornado on the cast. So it just keeps that line good and fresh. But likewise, there's a time and a place for braid as well, but you have to change your rod action to work with braid. And so with this braided line, I've got a 7.3 medium light Elliott, and it's a way softer tip. It still has some backbone, but it doesn't start until about halfway down the rod blank. And so the reason for that is you've got no stretch with the braid, right? So your rod is basically allowing to absorb those head shakes and those thrashes to keep that hook from tearing out like the mono does. Way softer rod. If you use braid and you've got a medium or medium heavy, a stouter rod, you're gonna lose so many fish. So it's about finding that happy balance. And if you've already got a rod, choose your line based on the rod you have. So you don't have to go out and buy a special jigging rap rod, but 7-foot medium fast for mono, 7-foot-ish medium light fast for braid. Run that fluoro leader for both, little barrel swivel, a size 00 crankbait snap. You see that's got the looped bottom, gives that bait full range of motion versus having that V at the bottom to lock the bait in. So here's a few other times when I would choose braid over mono, and that's up in the weeds. If it's really weedy, it is easier to snap that bait free from the weeds, get it clean, and know that you don't have to reel in to take them off and you can still get bit. So especially kind of that June-ish bite when the fish are just in the thinner weeds, sparser weeds, and I'm fishing shallower, I'll run braid. And also later in the summer, if I'm fishing in 15, 18-foot pockets in the coontail and cabbage, where it's like you'll be seeing on your down imaging just a little opening in the weeds and there's 5-6 fish on down imaging there. If you have mono, it's gonna be tough to pluck them out of there because as soon as your bait touches a weed, it's fouled, right? That braided line will let you snap it free. And I really like that mono on that deeper off the weed edge thing where there's just less weeds, less chance for your bait to foul up. But you are gonna have a way easier time if you're just getting into jigging rap fishing, hooking fish with braid. Just to be able to have that feel of when you go to pump that bait and that hook buries in their face, you can be, I guess, a little bit more relaxed and not know that you're about to get bit and hook up with that fish. Where with the mono, you're constantly having to choke up. Make sure your rod tip is, you know, within 10 inches of the surface so that when you go to snap, you've got 4 or 5 feet of movement, and if you get bit up here, you're really hurting to try to get a hook in that fish. Then with braid and the no stretch, it's just, I don't know, if somebody's going to learn to jigging rap for the first time, start with braid because you're gonna absolutely hook more fish, and it's gonna be frustrating because you're gonna lose some. You lose some on both, but I mean, you gotta at least get them hooked to have the chance to get them in, right? So start with braid as you're losing more fish, but you're gaining more confidence on hooking up and knowing when they're gonna bite, when to do that double pump into them, whatever. Then try transitioning to mono, and it's gonna take a full day, honestly, to get used to it. I ran braid exclusively on my jigging raps for probably 5 years, 4 years. And the first day I tried mono, I just felt like I had never fished a jigging rap before in my life. Every time I would get bit, I'd feel like I was just not choked up enough and I was missing them and getting a bad hook set. And now when I pick up braid, it feels weird, but start with braid, transition to mono, and when in doubt, buy it based off of your rod type that you already have to make that rod work for jigging raps for you. So another really, I guess, important thing to consider when you're choosing braid versus mono is, are you casting the jigging rap or are you dropping it straight off the back of the boat vertical jigging? Because when you're within, I would say, about 20 to 30 feet of the boat, mono is ideal. Obviously it's less visible, but just to get a hook into them is much easier. As soon as you start pitching out away from the boat, and on some of these really clear lakes, if you got a nice calm sunny day like this, you have to get out sometimes 35, 40 feet away from the boat to get bit, or they're gonna spook off. I have live scope, so I'm lucky and unfortunate at the same time enough to be able to watch fish as we're creeping up to them with the trolling motor. About 30 feet away, they turn and they change directions, and it's like they know you're there, whether it's a shadow or the noise or whatnot. So if you're in that type of a situation, I know you instantly want to think like, well, mono is less visible, I got clear water, but you're pitching farther away from the boat, so add a 8 or 10 foot, 8-pound fluorocarbon leader with a double uni knot, and then do your little barrel swivel to an 18-inch leader as well. And braid 30, 40 feet away from the boat, mono a little bit more vertical.